what does a beautiful future look like to you?
You can flip a negative mood on its head.
This was a talk that was all over the place, but then New York, you are all over the place.
There are experiences that you just don't get anywhere else.
Hey everyone, welcome to today's Conversation for Upload. This is the brand new hit series streaming right now on Amazon Prime. I'm your moderator, Scott Mantz. I'll be steering today's conversation. And I want to welcome from Upload, creator, executive producer, writer, director, showrunner, key grip, you name it, Greg Daniels. Welcome, Greg.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, so excited to talk with you. And please welcome, playing Nora, Andy Allo. Hi, Andy.
Hey.
And playing Nathan, Robbie Amell. How you doing, Robbie? You good?
Yeah, I'm great. Thanks for having us.
Very excited to talk to you about the conversation. First, I just want to talk, Greg, like where did the inspiration come from? And how long ago did you first get the idea to do a series like Upload?
Okay, well, you know, the very, very first inspiration happened when I was a writer on Saturday Night Live. I was living on 91st and Lex, right next to the Y, and I was trying to think of sketch ideas, and I was walking around Midtown past all the electronics stores, and they were advertising the new technology, the brand new technology of CD players. That's how long ago this was. And all the ads were about, you know, how digital was superior to analog. And I was trying to, you know, exaggerate it in my head and think, well, what would be the ultimate thing for a SNL sketch that you could, you know, you could digitize? And I was like, oh, well, if you digitized yourself and you lived in this, you know, sort of video game, it would actually be an opportunity for people to create a heaven that followed whatever rules that they wanted it to create. And I started to think, well, that's kind of a cool metaphor, you know, that's like an interesting thing, because I would expect that people would bring all of the same greed and unfairness that exists in modern society to this new digital thing that they created. And that could be like an interesting way to tell a sci-fi story. And anyway, it seemed like a lot more involved than a John Lovitz, Dana Carvey sketch, you know, so I just pocketed the idea. And over the years, I'd work on it a little bit, and I tried to make it into a book during the writer's strike of 2008. And then when The Office wrapped, I was casting around for my next thing to work on, and I started to work on this. And you know, so it's been a long time coming. But luckily, I think by waiting, you know, a lot of technology caught up with the idea, so you don't have to explain so much. And, you know, we live in this world of huge tech companies dominating everything now anyway. So it's kind of a lot closer to the original spirit.
Yeah, when you talked about CDs, I'm thinking, so you basically had this idea for more than 30 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, good timing, because the technology caught up to the idea. And Andy, I want to ask, like when you first took a gander at the screenplay for this and talk to Greg for the first time, like what was your take on this not too distant future that we were seeing on Upload?
I mean, it's so layered, and it's so rich and full of these incredibly just interesting characters. And also on top of that, it has this really cool tech aspect to it. And so that was really, really interesting of reading that. And you have this beautiful balance of relationships and characters, but also like really cool sci-fi. So that was really fun to kind of learn about this world. I'm like, ooh, okay. And for Nora, who kind of, you know, exists in both worlds, is really, really interesting to play with.
Yeah, Robbie, I want to ask you about the first conversations you had with Greg about about the show itself, about Nathan, about where the show was going to go? What were those conversations like?
Well, I got episodes, I believe it was 1, 2, and 3, but it might have been 1 and 2, and one was a little longer. I read them. I loved them. I thought that Nathan and I had a very similar voice and sense of humor. And I went in and met with Greg, and I walked in the room. He's like, sit down, let's just chat before you read for me, which is always nice because auditioning is a horrible process. And he was like, my daughter and I watched The Duff. I think you're really funny. I think you'd be great in this. And I was like, I am a huge fan of yours. I've watched all your shows. And we talked a little bit about the show and the character, and I read a few scenes, and then he was like, I want you to read one from another episode, and then another one from another episode, and another one from another episode. And after an hour and a half, he's like, all right, I guess you better leave. And I left thinking that was really awesome, and you never think that after an audition. And luckily I ended up being the guy that booked it, but it was a long process. And really the main thing that Greg and I talked about with the character at the beginning was finding that balance of somebody who's a little bit of a douchebag, but not wanting to lose the audience, because it'd be easy to just write somebody off, but we wanted to have a nice character arc throughout, the first season. So I think that was the biggest thing that we were trying to navigate from a character perspective. But I mean, Greg, for how successful and talented he is, he's very collaborative, and he's always asking, myself and Andy and the rest of the cast, what we think and what feels natural and where we want to see the characters go. And it's just been a really great process from start to finish so far.
Yeah, it's lonely to think about the idea by yourself for 30 years. So it's so great to be able to get some feedback,
Yeah, Andy, I want to ask about finding the rhythm that you and Robbie have. The chemistry is definitely there, but in terms of finding the rhythm, and Greg, when you felt that Robbie and Andy were really perfect for this cast. Let's start with you, Greg.
Well, Robbie was the first person to come in, and Andy was the last person to come in. And so we had the entire casting process of trying to match people to Robbie and see what other voices there were and everything. And, and I'm pretty, I don't know. I'm kind of a heady person, so like I got a good feeling. I got a good feeling about them, but I still was trying to be scientific and make them do chemistry reads and make sure and everything. So we had a long process, but they both kind of rose to the top of the process and were individually incredibly appealing because their stories are not always together. But then also when they're together, they have a good chemistry. So, I mean, I'd be interested to hear what how they thought. It's probably really irritating.
I don't know. Why don't you answer that question, Andy?
No, I mean, honestly, Greg has a way of making you feel really comfortable and making you feel like you can just be. And that was really refreshing. And just piggybacking off what Robbie said is like the audition process can be really traumatizing. But it was all play. And the chemistry read with Robbie was just that. Like Greg gave us like a few like improv scenes to do, and like Robbie and I just sitting next to each other and just like playing. It was just fun, and that feeling and that energy carried and has carried through shooting the pilot and then the series, and and even now the entire cast, we're on a group chat and text chain, and we like keep in touch. It's like we genuinely get along and like each other, and I think that translates so well. And I mean, you have to credit Greg and the whole casting team just putting together such incredible people. And I mean, I guess I like Robbie. I don't know. He's
well, you rewrite so much, with a TV show, you're hoping that it's going to go past seasons, longer than you've written so far, and you're going to rewrite on the set when you know who the actors are anyway. So much of it is finding people that you just want to be around more, and then you can always write towards them a little bit.
Well, how did you write towards like Robbie? You talked about how Nathan was, a little full of himself, but he's still likable. And I definitely picked up on that the first time I watched the first episode, that like, wow, he's really full of himself. Like, he's checking himself out on the bike and everything like that. But you really like the guy. So how, first question actually is for you, Robbie, is how did you sort of find that balance, and also find the balance of working on a show that really blended together some different genres with being a romance, a mystery, and also a satire?
Greg and I talked about it a little bit. We never wanted him to push, it was a fine line of writing something where we didn't want to go too far. But at the same time, these are the things that you want to see somebody change and grow throughout a season. You want to see that arc. So I think, being able to start off a certain way, knowing that you're going to show off some other characteristics as you go, is actually really nice as an actor. And I think, everybody's a little vain. I think everybody, looks in the mirror occasionally, and I think, this guy is just a little extra, and he likes himself a lot at the beginning. And I think, when you're telling a story about Nathan's in his, late 20s, mid-late 20s, and he, probably thinks he's a little more important than he is. Everybody is the protagonist of their own story. And then his whole world collapses, and he meets Nora, and he sees somebody who is working so hard, and, has lost their mother and is trying to save their father. And I think there's a big perspective shift for him to like, oh, this is, this person is really trying and doing something, and this, maybe I should be a little bit more like this person. And I think that's really nice about Nathan and Nora, is they get to learn from each other. And the nice thing about Andy and I is, although we got along right away, we didn't know each other, and neither did Nathan and Nora at the beginning of the story. So we got to know each other as our characters did. And I mean, if you get to know Andy as you've now interviewed her twice, and I'm sure you're already in love with her. She's so kind and so sweet. And, I think that is such an important part about Nora's character. She's, very much the beating heart of Upload. And if you don't care about her, we're all in trouble. So I think that,
there's
Andy
this
made our jobs easier.
Yeah, for sure. There's this part in episode 2 where Nathan's talking to his pet therapist, and the pet therapist points out that, he's had a lot of privilege in life, and he has never questioned it before. And so part of the show is, here's this guy, and he's going along with everything going his way, and he's thrown for a loop. He's dead now. So it's a good opportunity to learn something. Like, he's got a second chance to be a more well-rounded, significant, compassionate person. So.
Andy, I want to ask you the same question, though, as far as what Robbie was talking about, how, this is a series that does blend together a few different tones, a few different genres, finds the right balance between a romance, a mystery, and definitely a satire on consumerism in the 21st century. So, but it's also something that's very special effects heavy. So what were the challenges for you to find the right balance and to work with things that are not there?
Yeah, that was really interesting, because a lot of like the screens and even our phones, that was all kind of imagination. But I think because we had such a great foundation and in the world that Greg built, it was easy to kind of imagine it and create it. And you felt like you were part of the process because you were part of the process. It's like we were all kind of there bringing his baby to life, in a way, And I think for Nora, what was interesting character-wise is because she exists in reality, and virtual reality and this afterlife, was kind of creating the differences between who she is in her regular kind of day-to-day like struggle, and then as this more enhanced, polished, put together, in the last scene of the pilot where she says, or Nathan asks, like, so is this you? Do you look like this?
Yeah.
You're not some like guy sitting somewhere. It's like, no, this is me. I mean, I have makeup on and my hair's nice. Whatever. I don't have sweatpants on. And I think like playing in that world of, okay, who does she get to be? And I mean, a lot of it was just kind of the imagination. And one of the great things was during shooting, if Robbie and I weren't in scenes together, but we had to imagine something, we were both there for each other to kind of read off screen, even when we didn't have to be. And that made like a world of a difference of being able to just hear the other person's voice and know they were there. And so that instantly, again, just like created this, really this cohesiveness and this connection, where we really kind of had each other's backs, which was really great.
Sorry.
Yep.
I was going to say there's, this type of science fiction is meant to be kind of relatable, so that it's not like people walking down hallways on Starship X-93 or, I don't know. You're supposed to be able to sort of identify with it. And so we were always looking for different metaphors and to compare what they were going through with stuff that you already have gone through. And Andy did a fantastic one on an interview a little while ago about just making the comparison to the life we lead now, while we're only being able to interact with people over Zoom, and everything is kind of mediated through technology. And her experience, in virtual reality, trying to connect with someone that she never gets to be in person with. And I thought that was obviously we shot it before the pandemic, but if we hadn't, that would have been a great metaphor to talk about on the set.
So I'm not going to be the only one here to say that I've been talking to my dog a lot these last few months. And pet therapy is just one of the ways that Upload has kind of really nailed the time, foreshadowed certain things that happened in the very, very near future. But overall, I got to tell you that there is something very plausible about so much of what is happening in Upload. So, Greg, like, what were your what was your template to make sure that you got that you kept it real?
Well, it's satiric, and you pointed out that it's satiric about consumer culture, which it completely is. And but we also picked two other aspects. We wanted to be satiric about income inequality, because it's a big problem and it's only getting worse. And it seems like the notion of a for-profit heaven is, a perfect way to talk about that. And also the idea of environmental degradation is another big topic. So, in the future that they're in, everybody's saving up money to be uploaded, so they're not really spending it too much on the actual world. They're all worried about the virtual world. And so, the air is more polluted and everything's hotter, and there are no birds. There's just drones in the skies. And, so there's a bunch of satiric targets. I'm not sure. And then you were asking about how to keep it plausible. But, and then in terms of the research, because it's only supposed to be about 15 years in the future, a lot of it was finding actual technology that they have prototypes of right now, but hasn't been widely made available, and then just making it available to everybody in the show. So people have 3D printers now, and now it's as common as a microwave in the future, and you use it for your food and things like that.
Amazing, really amazing. Another character that I really love on the show is Ingrid. Allegra Edwards is, she really crushes it. She's such a, what's it like working with her, Robbie? Because she's so funny.
I mean, I knew she was funny right off the bat because you just get that from her. But I think she gets away with saying some of the things she says because she's actually so not that in real life. She's so kind and so sweet that she can play such a bitch that people are okay with it. But like, I really knew she was funny when there's when she wears the sex suit over. I think that it just perfectly displays her comedic chops of like her in the Victoria's Secret walking in the door, and then you see her in the hot water bottle looking scuba suit in the bathtub, and like her yelling down tech support at my crotch was improvised, and it had me and her cracking up so hard. She's very, very funny, but very, very sweet. And I mean, Greg, it always comes back to Greg. The casting process, I think I read with 5 or 6 different Ingrids and 5 or 6 different Noras. And, everybody did an amazing job. And then there's 2 people that stand out amongst great performers. And that's, Andy and Allegra. And they're just so great.
Yeah. Greg, I want to ask you talked to her a bit about writing to your cast. How did you do that with Upload? Like, once you got your, this amazing cast, and the chemistry is just so right on point. Like, how do you write to that?
Well, we shot a pilot in 2018, in January 2018. And so when we shot everything past the first episode, it was after having spent 4 or 5 months staring at, everybody, which was not hard because they're all terrific. But, I've been staring at Robbie, I've been staring at Andy, I've been picking through every take that they've had and, feeling like, oh, this is when Robbie is the funniest, when he's kind of backing away and brushing it off. This is where Andy shines, So you have, the pilot's really a good process. And because it was so visual effects heavy, it took a really long time to complete. So, there was a lot of time spent looking at the pilot. And so then when we all got together as a writing staff to do, the rest of the season, a lot of the scripts had already been written, but, there's always rewriting, and you can kind of swap out jokes and you debate why everybody's so good and what's their best part and how do you increase it? And it's fun because it involves all the writers in the process.
Where did you shoot Lakeview? Like, where did you shoot those scenes?
Well, the exteriors for Lakeview, all the drone photography, that's in New Paltz, New York. That's an actual place called the Mohawk Mountain House, which is a Victorian hotel that's like a historic site in upstate New York. And then when we got down with the characters, we were in Vancouver most of the time, and a variety of locations there, like Stanley Park and the Faculty Club of the University of British Columbia were the 2 best, I think.
Well, what's it like shooting in New York and then shooting the very next scene in Vancouver? Robbie, Andy, your takes on just sort of like having to capture that moment and stay in that moment halfway across the country.
Well, I mean, we never shot anything other than we shot the pilot in LA, and then the everything else was in Vancouver. We weren't there for any of the drone footage or anything like that. And to be honest with you, the construction team and the set design and the production designer, everything did such an unbelievable job that you're walking around these sets on a soundstage, and it doesn't feel anything like. It just feels like you're there. You get lost in everything else. And, Andy obviously had to shuffle through a lot more places in Lakeview and not Lakeview than I did. But we had a great team.
The production designer was really terrific, Rachel O'Toole. And I think it might have been helped by the fact that there's a strong design style for those kind of Victorian hotels that are similar to the Pacific Northwest in Canada and the Adirondacks, and they have like a cool style, so that kind of helped too.
A lot of taxidermy.
Andy, what was it like for you to watch the show after you're filming, with visual effects that aren't in place yet? Like, what's it like for you to make believe for all that time, and then to see the finished product and everything just looks so freaking real?
I mean, it's amazing. And it's really awesome because then you're like, oh, thank God, like my eye lines made sense. Sometimes especially like the hand phone, because you're like looking through, and you're like, oh gosh, I hope this looks like I'm looking close to me and not like far in advance. I don't know. It all kind of came together, and it's so amazing and incredible seeing the effects and how real everything looks. It's such a dream. It's really, really cool.
How about when you were flying around like a duck?
Oh my gosh. I remember when we were shooting that, they built this rig that I like with like almost like a bike seat I'm sitting on, and they like two guys, I'm on like a pulley system, and like pull me. It felt like medieval times. They're like pull me with weights, and then I'm like up, and there's this giant green screen behind me, and it was the episode that Greg directed, and Greg's directing, and and he's like, all right, more louder duck sounds. All right, and then all right, stop swinging her around. Okay. And now there's this loud fan that's like blowing air at me. It was madness. And then to actually watch it, and I didn't shoot with Zainab or Mr. Choke. So that was amazing just to actually see it get like intercut. And it looked really fun. Yeah, it was wild.
Another day that it started raining. Like,
oh god,
that's the one thing about Vancouver is, it rains a lot, and so we had to do something called rain removal on a lot of shots, which is I don't even know how they do that. But.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, when we were singing.
The bathroom scene, shooting the bathroom scene, and then watching the bathroom scene.
The bathroom scene is one of the most fun I've ever had shooting anything in my career. Greg, myself, and Owen, who's Greg's son, who plays the AI man, we had so much fun shooting that scene. It went on and on and on, and then seeing it cut together. And Greg had to go into the visual effects house and like give them a tutorial on how he thought the water or the pee should look. And Owen picked the music. Owen picked the music, which was temporary originally. And I was like, oh, I really hope we get this song because it's so perfect. But that scene, it's one of my favorite scenes of the show, and I think really set the tone for what you never know what you're getting into when you start a show, and that's in the pilot. And I think that, for me, that really, really made me excited for what I was getting into.
That was also something where it really wasn't in the script. We just, it was just like the premise. And then Robbie just went to town, improvising different. Yeah, it was fun.
Greg, working with Amazon Studios as a partner on this, and having a tone that allows you to go a little further into R-rated territory. How did writing, how did producing, and how did directing Upload take you into areas that you just never done before?
Well, it was really good. I had the same executives for the whole time, and they gave very good notes, and they were always encouraging me to think of it as a 5-hour movie. And to build a world out of it. And so they gave like kind of independent movie notes, which, were really refreshing. And they were always, keeping an eye on the long-term character arc for everybody and making sure that they were like interesting and rich. And it's like, they were very unusual notes, in my experience, but they were really good. It was really fun.
Yeah, so watching, I was not even halfway through episode 1, And I started to really think like, upload. Is this something that I would do? And with Nora, talking to her father, sort of prepping him, and, her father is really sticking to, I'm going to do it the old fashioned way so I can see her mom. I mean, it does get very philosophical. There's a faith aspect to it. And the show is serious. It's serious when it needs to be, is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
How did making this sort of challenge your own way of thinking about the afterlife in a serious way? Let's start with you, Andy.
Yeah, I mean, what I love about this show and what Greg created is it does make you think, and it makes you question certain things, and not in a way that you feel like it's being pushed on you. It's so inviting, and it's so like, yeah, would I upload? What does that mean? And because there's the different perspectives are covered with the various characters, it feels so well-rounded, and it feels like, okay, oh yeah, I'm Nora, I'm Robbie, I'm Allegra, or Ingrid, or I'm her dad, I'm Mr. Anthony. So it's like, there's different perspectives. And so that was really, really cool for me to see and be able to relate to. But it does make you think, would you upload? What does it mean to live life fully? And what would it be like if we could upload? And what is the life that you want to create here? And if you could in a virtual reality. And so, yeah, it definitely makes you think, which is good. And a lot of conversations.
Well, would you?
I don't know. I've thought about this. What am I saying? Of course. Yes. 100%. Yes. Sign me up. Let's do it.
Let's do it, right? How about you, Robbie? Would you do it?
Yeah. I mean, I see it as we don't know what's next. That's the unknown. If I know what upload is, then I'll take my chances there. And then once I'm sick of that, I'll jump in the torrent, find out what's next.
Well, it's funny because I thought, yeah, I would do this. But there's that moment when Nathan says, I have infinity. And I went, maybe I wouldn't do this. Infinity's a mighty long time. I don't know.
Right.
It always stood out to me the conversation at the torrent in the pilot, and I just think a combination of Greg and his just very, to me, interesting yet grounded writing, but also Andy's performance of this isn't heaven, and that's what makes it so great. And life isn't heaven, and that's what makes it great and what makes it bad. And, those things are in upload. And I think that, you kind of have to have the good with the bad. And I think that there's comedic elements to having this, all of the gross parts about life being in upload as well. But I also just think it makes you think, and it asks interesting questions, but it doesn't necessarily force any answers on you, which, I always found that while I was reading the show and watching the show and talking to people who had seen the show, people had different thoughts on some of the questions that were posed, and some were similar to mine, some were different, and I just think that makes for interesting television.
After the table read from the pilot, all the actors that participated in the pilot table read, we hung out and just started talking about the show and what the future would be like, and what it would be like if we could program ourselves like this. And it very quickly got into this super interesting philosophical conversation with everybody throwing their points of view in. And, basically, I think this is why the idea stuck with me so long from, that long time, because it brings this stuff up, but you don't have to ever write about it in a way. It's like present in the concept. So you can write just entertainment. You can just write them, having interesting jokes and, pursuing a murder mystery and stuff like that. And you don't have to write in a very preachy or philosophical way for the show to make people think.
Greg, I want to ask, since the series dropped on Amazon Prime on, I think it was May 1st, like, have you had conversations with people, whether it's, family, friends, press people, cast members, about some of the maybe a religious bent on how it does make people think, like real serious conversations about some of the ideas proposed in the show?
Yeah, a little bit, because we are in a time. I mean, a lot of the issues in the show are how science can help extend human life if you accept it, versus people rejecting it because it's unfamiliar or whatever. And so there's echoes of that in our world today, because obviously it's you look around and some people are accepting science and some people aren't, and so those things keep coming up. And then there's this aspect of it too where some of I have had questions from people, and they were feeling like uncomfortable about the tech version of what life would be like if this was happening. And just like Nora's dad, they're feeling like it seems like an abomination in some way. And I was thinking of this sort of parable that I remember of this guy who's in the middle of a flood, and he's on his roof, and he's praying to God to help him out. And his neighbor comes up in a canoe and says, "Jump in the canoe." And he says, No, I don't need to. I'm praying to God. He's going to save me. And then the waters continue to rise, and the guy drowns, and he goes up to heaven, and he's angry, and he says to God, "Well, I had faith in you. I was expecting you to save me." And God says, "I sent you the guy in the canoe, and you wouldn't get in it." So like, there's this aspect where, who knows where the scientists are inspired to invent what they invent, and if there is a technological way for us to continue to live, whether it's eyeglasses or antibiotics or whatever, who knows? Maybe that's sent from God to help us. And so I don't see it as being such a either or situation.
No, it's definitely not. That's what I like about it too, is that, we all have our happy place, and, Lakeview looks like a pretty happy place. But I thought about, well, what's my happy place? So I want to ask each one of you, what is your happy place here in the here and now? What is your happy place?
I was like, oh, wait, can I have some time to think about it? Okay, what's my happy place? Wow.
Are you back to the beach, or are you in Paris again?
You know what? Listen, don't judge my various happy places.
When we were doing press about a month ago, I guess, or a little longer than that, we had a similar question, and in 2 interviews back to back, Andy's answer changed.
That's okay.
Allowed.
Okay, so is it a happy place in what your ideal upload, or is this happy place now, here on Earth?
Here, in the here and now.
Got you. Okay, I'm just trying to understand the specifics.
You're stalling.
You know what? Whose side are you on? Okay. My happy place would be, you know what? Kauai.
That's good.
Yes, with my guitar, and I mean, it's my happy place. So then I would have, all the people that I love and friends and hanging out with me, and we'd just be, and my brother would have a burger shack on the beach that he makes burgers on, and that's where he is.
What's your happy place, Robbie?
I want to go to Andy's happy place.
Yuri, I want you there.
That sounds great.
Come on.
Yeah, I'm a big fan. That sounds great. That sounds really nice. I have a 9-month-old baby, so lately my happy place has been in my bed past 8 in the morning. That's the best. That's really nice. I love to golf, maybe the golf course, but I like the sounds of Andy's beach vacation with a burger shack nearby. That sounds really nice.
That does. And you can have my guitar right here. It's all yours, Andy.
Non-stop jam sessions. But don't worry, Robbie, I won't ask you to sing.
No.
So, Greg, just wrapping things up here, what can we expect as things go for Upload in season 2? Any thoughts?
Yeah, well, we've been working on it since February, the writing staff, and we're going to see Nora exploring the world of the Ludds, and we're going to see what it's like with Ingrid now living with Nathan, and how they all the characters reunite in Lakeview. So there's a lot of stuff coming.
Well, congratulations on Upload, and Upload is streaming now on Amazon Prime. Robbie, Andy, Greg, thank you so much for this great conversation.
Thank you, Scott.
Thank you.
Great conversation.
Thank you.
All right.